To start out, I'd like to look back at this page and just talk about domain and range. Now we know in general that domain, let me get my pencil here, domain is our possible what values? Possible x values. We know that range is our possible y values. So when we look at something like this first one, and you can write this on your page with me. That is part of the directions. We ignored that yesterday just because we had enough going on yesterday. But when we look at number 1, if we're looking at the possible x values, that first line will go forever and ever. The blue one will go forever and ever in one direction. The second line will go forever and ever in another direction. So our x values are going to continue to increase, or decrease, and they're never going to run out. So if there is anything that we could put in for x, what would we call that? All real numbers. Good job. We get to write the fancy r. Now, when we look at our y values, our range, can we have a y value, or do we have one like down here at -10? No. The smallest y value that we have is right here at -4. And it's not even equal to -4. It's technically -3.9999999, and so on. So we would say our range is our y's are all greater than, not equal to, just greater than -4. Because everything up here, we're going to keep going for forever in this direction and forever in this direction. So all of these high numbers are going to be part of our range. But these low numbers down here and forever down here will not be. So when we talk about our range, we've got to make sure we're saying, here's the bottom, and it's everything above. When we look at number 2, why don't you take just a minute to give the range, domain and range. Well, we know what domain is, but give the domain and range for number 2. Why don't you give that a try, whether you're in person or on the video. Let me show that again. We already know the domain, but what would our range be? I'll give you about 10 more seconds. We know our domain, again, is all real numbers. Our range, here's the bottom value that we can have. It looks like that's at -3. So everything above, everything greater than -3 would be in our range. We can't have -5, -10, -20. Anything way down there does not work. Anything above -3. Now, if this were a filled-in circle, we would say equal to. Then we'd use the equal to. But since it's an open circle, it's just everything above. And the last one on here, our domain again. And they don't ask for domain and range, but just for the practice, our domain is all real. Our range would be, and let's say that's at -3. We could do a little more work to find that, but just for the sake of time, let's say this is down 3. Would again be everything above or equal to -3. Domain is easy. Domain we like. That's always going to be all real numbers. Range can be a little more tricky. We've got to see, what are we always above? And they could do something where they say, what are we always below? It could be that both our lines are facing down. Now, looking at those book problems. For number 1, And if you want to open your iPad and have the actual problem in front of you, that would be totally okay, and that might be helpful for you. You don't have to, but that could be helpful. For number 1, I've got the equations up there. That is what your graph should look like. We've got a y-intercept here in this first one. At 3, we're going in the positive direction. It says if x... Oh, no. Did I switch them around? Are you sure? I think I did. Yeah, I did. X is less than 0 should be going the other way. If x is less than 0, we should be going that way. Look, that's not even there. Neither is that. If x is greater than 0, we should be taking this piece of it. Oh no, I messed up again. We want that piece like that. My fault. I'll erase that from the video later. Now that changes our range. Our domain is still all real numbers, but our range would be everything below this point. It's less than or equal to, that's at positive 3. Positive 3. So it's everything below that point right there. We cannot have like a 10 or a 20, or we will not have a 10 or 20 or 30. How is that even possible? I'm not even touching it. A 10 or 20 or 30 in our range. It's only going to be those low numbers, or lower numbers. Number 3, a little bit different because the exchange point, or the spot where we were changing things around, was at 1. So that makes it a little bit more difficult because we can't just use the y-intercept. We've got to do a little bit more work. If we look at the first one, our y-intercept is at -2. We have a slope of -3. I went down 3, right 1. You could have went up 3, left 1. Same thing. But then you draw your line, and we want when x is less than or equal to 1. So this line would really go all through here, but we do not want this piece down here. And then for the other one, we went up 1. And let's see, I went up 1, over 1 for that line, for that dot. And we want when x is greater than 1. Again, our domain is all real numbers. Our range, the bottom value here, is -5. We want everything above. All of these work. All these above work for our range. Last 3. And these, I think, are hopefully the easier ones. Hopefully you found, I found this as the day went on, that writing the equations was a lot easier than writing the graphs. I don't have the graph pulled up, but again, if you have that pulled up on your screen, that might be helpful. But here are the equations that I got. X plus 2, if x is greater than 0, -x minus 1, if x is less than or equal to 0. Here's what I got for number 9. Number 9 was a little bit goofy because this is a horizontal line, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. This would have looked like that. So remember, horizontal lines, we do not need to have an x in our equation. And then number 10, we did not look at one the whole time that had 3 different things in it. But for writing this equation, I thought it'd be interesting to try 3. This right here is not a plus sign. This is a minus sign. So I'm not sure why that other line is through it, but that is a -2 right there. Notice how this one covers everything up to -2, and then this one picks up at -2 and covers everything until 1. And then this one handles everything going the other direction. How they kind of pick up right after each other. I know with those last few, not seeing the graphs can make it a little bit more difficult to correct and understand. But are there any questions on that, on those 5? Okay.